What happens when a man discovers the woman he loves is more machine than human? Just as Jack begins to uncover the truth about Ilya's past, a secret buried deep within her code threatens to destroy everything they've fought for. You won't believe what she's capable of, and how far he'll go to protect her. Jack Harper never believed in coincidences. Not anymore. The rain hammered against the cracked windows of his cramped apartment as he stared at the photo on his desk. It was old, faded around the edges, but still clear enough to see her face. Ilya Mron. 6 years ago, she had vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but questions. And now she was back. The knock at the door startled him. 3 sharp raps, deliberate and urgent. He hesitated before opening it, his hand instinctively brushing against the holstered weapon tucked beneath his coat. Standing there was Ilya herself, drenched from the storm, her silver eyes gleaming like shards of moonlight. She looked exactly the same as he remembered, hauntingly beautiful yet distant. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low and steady, betraying no emotion. Jack stepped aside, letting her in. His heart pounded as he locked the door behind her. He wanted answers, but something about her presence made him uneasy. She moved with purpose, scanning the room before finally settling into a chair by the table. "You're probably wondering why I'm here," she began, avoiding eye contact. Jack crossed his arms. "That's one of many things I'm wondering." Ilya reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device, a data drive. She placed it on the table between them. "This contains information that could change everything you know about me, about us." Her words hung heavy in the air. Jack leaned forward, his curiosity outweighing his caution. "What kind of information?" She didn't answer immediately, instead choosing to study him carefully, as if gauging whether or not he was ready for what she had to say. Finally, she spoke. "I wasn't who you thought I was, Jack. None of this," she gestured vaguely around the room, "is what it seems. And if we don't act fast, neither of us will make it out alive. We only just started this story, but trust me, it's about to get much more intense. Stay tuned to find out what happens when Jack uncovers the truth and realizes how deep the conspiracy goes." The weight of Ilya's words settled over Jack like a suffocating fog. He stared at the data drive, its metallic surface reflecting the dim light of the room. For 6 years, he'd convinced himself that her disappearance was some cruel twist of fate. But now, sitting across from her, he couldn't shake the feeling that she'd been hiding something all along. Something big. "I don't understand," Jack said slowly, his voice tinged with frustration. "If you weren't who I thought you were, then who were you?" Ilya sighed, running a hand through her damp hair. "It's complicated. Let's just say I was working for someone else, someone powerful, someone who doesn't take kindly to loose ends." Her cryptic response only fueled Jack's growing unease. "Loose ends? Is that what I am to you? A liability?" He stood abruptly, pacing the length of the room. Outside, the storm raged on, lightning illuminating the jagged skyline beyond the window. "You owe me an explanation, Ilya. After everything we went through together, you owe me that much." Ilya met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "You're right, I do. But explanations can wait. What matters now is survival." She tapped the data drive. "Inside this is proof of their operations, illegal experiments, cover-ups, assassinations. If they find out I have it, they'll stop at nothing to silence us both." Jack froze, his mind racing. Illegal experiments? Assassinations? This wasn't just some corporate scandal. It was a full-blown conspiracy. And somehow he'd been dragged into the middle of it. "Why did you come to me?" he asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Why risk exposing yourself after all these years? For the first time since entering the apartment, Ilya allowed a flicker of vulnerability to show. Because I trust you, Jack. Because despite everything, I still care about you. And because she trailed off, her jaw tightening. Because I need your help. We're on the brink of a major turning point. What happens next will shatter everything you think you know. Don't miss the explosive revelations waiting just around the corner. The tension in the room was palpable as Jack processed Ilya's words. Trust, care, help. These were concepts he hadn't associated with her in years, not since she disappeared without so much as a goodbye. Yet here she was, asking him to believe in her again, to put his life on the line for a cause he barely understood. You're asking a lot, Jack said finally, his tone measured but firm. How do I even know any of this is real? For all I know, this could be some elaborate setup. Ilya's lips pressed into a thin line. I expected skepticism. That's why I brought evidence. With swift precision, she connected the data drive to a portable terminal she'd brought with her. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, interspersed with images and documents too classified to ignore. This is Project EOS, Ilya explained, pointing to a file labeled with a series of alphanumeric codes. A covert initiative funded by a shadow organization operating outside government oversight. They've been experimenting with human augmentation, pushing the boundaries of what it means to be human. And they've already succeeded. Jack leaned closer, his eyes scanning the files. Test subjects, failed prototypes, successful integrations. The implications were staggering. Why are you showing me this? He asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Ilya turned to face him, her silver eyes burning with intensity. Because I'm one of them. The revelation hit Jack like a punch to the gut. One of them, enhanced, augmented. Whatever euphemism they used, it meant she wasn't entirely human anymore. When? He managed to choke out, his voice strained. How long have you been? 6 years, Ilya admitted quietly. They recruited me shortly after we met. At first, I thought it was noble work, advancing science, helping humanity evolve. But then I saw the cost, the suffering, the lives destroyed in pursuit of perfection. Her voice cracked slightly, and for a moment, she looked almost fragile. Almost. Jack sank back into his chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was telling him. And now they're coming for you, he surmised grimly. Ilya nodded. Not just me. Anyone who knows about Project EOS, including you. As the reality of their situation sank in, Jack felt a surge of anger bubbling beneath the surface. How could she keep something like this from him? All those nights they'd spent talking about their dreams, their fears. He thought he knew her. But the person sitting across from him now was a stranger in many ways. So what's the plan? Jack demanded, his voice sharp with frustration. Do we run? Fight back? Or do we just sit here waiting for them to show up and drag us away? Ilya's expression hardened, her earlier vulnerability replaced by cold determination. Running won't solve anything. Neither will fighting blindly. We need leverage, something they can't afford to lose. She pulled up another file on the terminal, this one detailing a sprawling facility located in the heart of the city. This is their main hub, she explained, where they store the core data for Project EOS. If we can infiltrate it and retrieve the original research logs, we might be able to expose them to the world. Jack raised an eyebrow skeptically. Infiltrate? You make it sound easy. Do you even know what kind of security they have in place? Ilya smirked faintly. Better than you think. But yes, I've done my homework. Their systems aren't impenetrable. Not with the right tools and the right people. Jack groaned, rubbing his temples. And let me guess, you want me to be one of those people. Ilya nodded solemnly. You're resourceful, Jack. Smart. And most importantly, you're unpredictable. They won't see you coming. Despite his reservations, Jack couldn't deny the logic in her plan. If they succeeded, they'd not only save themselves, they'd bring down an entire corrupt operation. But failure wasn't an option. Failure meant death. The hours that followed were a blur of preparation and paranoia. Jack and Ilya scoured the city for supplies, each step fraught with the fear of being watched. Every shadow seemed to move, every passerby a potential threat. The weight of their mission pressed down on them like a vice, but neither dared to voice their doubts aloud. By nightfall, they had assembled a modest arsenal: EMP grenades, hacking devices, and enough firepower to take on a small army. Ilya also procured a set of cloaking chips, tiny implants designed to temporarily mask their presence from surveillance systems. These should buy us some time, she said, holding up one of the chips. But they won't last forever. Once we're inside, we'll need to move quickly. Jack examined the chip warily. You sure about this? Messing with tech like this feels risky. Ilya shrugged. Risky, yes, but necessary. Trust me, I've used worse. As they finalized their plans, Jack found himself studying Ilya more closely. There was something different about her, not just physically, but emotionally. She carried herself with a confidence that bordered on recklessness. Yet there were moments when her facade slipped, revealing glimpses of the woman he once loved. The woman who had promised him a future free of secrets and lies. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Jack asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Ilya paused, caught off guard by the question. Would it have mattered? She countered softly. Would you have believed me? The honesty in her voice struck a chord within him. No, he probably wouldn't have. Not back then. But now? Now he wasn't so sure. The night was eerily silent as Jack and Ilya approached the outskirts of the facility. The towering structure loomed ahead, its sleek metallic surface reflecting the dim glow of the city's perpetual haze. Security drones patrolled the perimeter, their red lights scanning methodically for intruders. Every instinct in Jack's body screamed at him to turn back, but he knew there was no going now. They were committed. Ilya crouched beside him, her movements fluid and precise. She tapped a small device on her wrist, syncing it with the cloaking chips embedded beneath their skin. 5 minutes, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the drones. That's all we've got before the signal fades. Jack nodded, his grip tightening on the EMP grenade in his hand. Let's make them count. They moved swiftly, darting between shadows as the cloaking field distorted their forms. The first wave of drones passed overhead without detecting them, their sensors momentarily blind to the anomaly slipping through their grid. But just as they reached the outer wall, an alarm blared, a sharp, piercing sound that sent a jolt of adrenaline coursing through Jack's veins. They know we're here, Ilya hissed, pulling out a compact hacking tool. Her fingers flew across the interface as she attempted to override the security lock on the entrance. Behind them, the whirring of approaching drones grew louder. Hurry up, Jack urged, turning to face the incoming threat. He hurled the EMP grenade into the air, the resulting pulse disabling several drones in an instant. Sparks rained down like fireflies, illuminating the chaos around them. Finally, the door hissed open, and Ilya grabbed Jack's arm, yanking him inside. The heavy metal barrier slammed shut behind them, cutting off the cacophony outside. For a brief moment, they stood in silence, catching their breath. We're not safe yet, Ilya warned, her eyes scanning the darkened corridor ahead. This place is crawling with guards. And worse, inside the facility, the atmosphere shifted from controlled chaos to suffocating tension. The walls were lined with pulsating conduits, glowing faintly in hues of blue and green. The air smelled sterile, tinged with something metallic that made Jack's skin crawl. It felt less like a research center and more like the belly of some monstrous machine. Ilya led the way, her steps confident despite the uncertainty of their surroundings. She paused at a junction, consulting a holographic map projected from her wrist device. "The data archives are 2 levels down," she murmured, "but we'll need to disable the secondary security system first." "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" Jack asked, his tone laced with skepticism. Ilya smirked, holding up a small vial filled with a shimmering liquid. "With this, a neural disruptor. It'll fry their AI network long enough for us to get what we need." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You just happen to carry something like that around?" "I came prepared," she replied cryptically, tucking the vial back into her pocket. Before they could move further, a group of armed guards rounded the corner, their weapons trained directly on them. Time seemed to slow as Jack processed the situation. There were 5 of them, heavily armored and clearly expecting resistance. "Hands where we can see them," one of the guards barked, his voice echoing through the narrow hallway. Ilya glanced at Jack, her expression unreadable. Then, without warning, she lunged forward, her movements faster than humanly possible. In a blur of motion, she disarmed 2 of the guards before they even had time to react. Jack followed suit, using the element of surprise to take down another. When the dust settled, the remaining guards lay unconscious, scattered across the floor. Jack stared at Ilya, his chest heaving. "What the hell was that? You said you weren't fully augmented." "There's a lot I didn't tell you," she admitted, her voice tinged with guilt. "But now isn't the time for explanations. We need to keep moving." As they descended deeper into the facility, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that Ilya was hiding even more than she'd already revealed. Her enhanced abilities were both impressive and unnerving, raising questions he wasn't sure he wanted answered. Still, he pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. The second level was eerily quiet, almost too quiet. The hum of machinery was replaced by an oppressive stillness, broken only by the occasional flicker of light overhead. Ilya stopped abruptly, her head tilting slightly as if listening for something. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Jack strained his ears, picking up a faint rhythmic sound, like footsteps, but heavier, mechanical. His stomach sank. "Please tell me that's not what I think it is." Before Ilya could respond, the source of the noise emerged from the shadows. A towering humanoid figure clad in reinforced plating, its limbs adorned with lethal attachments. It was a combat drone, far more advanced than anything they'd encountered so far. "Stay behind me," Ilya ordered, her voice steady despite the danger. She pulled out the neural disruptor, aiming it at the drone. With a sharp click, she activated the device, releasing a pulse of energy that should have disabled the machine instantly. But nothing happened. The drone advanced, its glowing red eyes locking onto them. "It's shielded," Ilya muttered, cursing under her breath. "We'll have to fight our way out." Jack drew his weapon, firing a series of shots at the drone's joints. Sparks flew, but the damage was minimal. Meanwhile, Ilya darted around the creature, striking with precision blows that would have incapacitated a normal opponent. But this thing wasn't normal. It kept coming, relentless and unyielding. Just when it seemed like they were outmatched, Jack noticed a weak point, a cluster of exposed wiring near the base of the drone's neck. "Aim for the neck," he shouted, drawing the drone's attention while Ilya maneuvered into position. With a final, powerful strike, she severed the connection, causing the machine to collapse in a heap of sparking metal. Breathing heavily, she turned to Jack. "We can't afford any more delays." If they send reinforcements, we're dead. Their progress became a race against time, each step bringing them closer to the heart of the facility and the truth buried within its archives. Along the way, they encountered more obstacles: locked doors, automated defenses, and increasingly sophisticated traps designed to deter intruders. Each challenge tested their resolve, forcing them to rely on each other in ways neither had anticipated. At one point, Jack found himself trapped in a containment chamber, the walls closing in as part of a security protocol. Ilya worked frantically to override the system, her hands trembling with urgency. "I'm not losing you again," she muttered half to herself. When the walls finally retracted, Jack emerged shaken but alive. "You really mean that, don't you?" he asked, his voice softer than before. Ilya hesitated, then nodded. "Ido, whatever happens next, I want you to know that." Finally, they reached the data archives, a vast room filled with rows of servers humming with stored information. Ilya connected her terminal to the mainframe, sifting through terabytes of encrypted files. "It's here," she said after a tense few minutes. "The original research logs. Everything they've done, all the experiments, the subjects, the cover-ups." But as she began downloading the data, a chilling realization dawned on her. "Jack, there's something else. Something I didn't expect." "What is it?" he asked, dread pooling in his stomach. She turned to face him, her expression grim. "My name is in these files, not as an operative but as a test subject. Project EOS didn't just recruit me. They created me." The revelation hit Jack like a freight train, shattering everything he thought he knew about Ilya. Created? As in manufactured? The implications were staggering, rewriting the very foundation of who she was, and, by extension, who they were together. "You're saying," he began, struggling to form the words. "You're saying you're not even human?" Ilya flinched, visibly wounded by the accusation. "No, Jack. I'm saying I'm more than human. Less than human. I don't even know anymore. All I know is that I've been running from this my entire life, trying to escape what they made me become." Before either of them could process the weight of her confession, the room was flooded with light as a squadron of elite guards burst in, surrounding them. At their head stood a man in a pristine white coat, his cold gaze fixed on Ilya. "Dr. Elias Crane," she spat, venom dripping from her voice. "I should have known you'd be here." Crane smiled thinly, stepping forward. "Ilya Mran, or should I say Subject Alpha 7, you've caused quite the disruption. Did you really think you could walk away from us?" Jack stepped protectively in front of Ilya, his weapon drawn. "Over my dead body." Crane chuckled, unfazed. "If that's what it takes." What followed was a desperate battle, pushing both Jack and Ilya to their limits. Betrayals were uncovered, alliances shattered, and sacrifices made. By the end, the facility lay in ruins, its secrets spilled into the world. But at what cost? The explosion rocked the facility, sending shockwaves through the crumbling structure. Jack and Ilya stumbled out of the chaos, their bodies battered but alive. Behind them, flames licked at the wreckage, consuming the remnants of Project EOS, and Dr. Elias Crane along with it. The scientist's final moments had been consumed by his own hubris, his attempts to capture Ilya ending in catastrophe as the facility's core destabilized. Jack coughed, shielding his face from the smoke that billowed around them. "Is it over?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Ilya didn't answer immediately, her gaze fixed on the inferno behind them. Her expression was unreadable, a mixture of relief and sorrow etched across her features. "It's over," she said finally, though her tone suggested otherwise. "But nothing will ever be the same." As they limped away from the ruins, The weight of what they'd uncovered settled heavily upon them. The data Ilya had retrieved painted a horrifying picture. Decades of unethical experiments, countless lives destroyed, and a conspiracy that reached far beyond the walls of that single facility. But amidst the darkness, there was hope, a chance to expose the truth and hold those responsible accountable. Yet, as they disappeared into the night, neither could shake the feeling that their fight was far from finished. In the days that followed, Jack and Ilya went underground, holing up in an abandoned safe house on the outskirts of the city. The media was ablaze with reports of the mysterious explosion at the research facility, though no concrete answers had surfaced. Speculation ran rampant, ranging from industrial accidents to terrorist attacks. For now, their role in the destruction remained hidden, but Jack knew it wouldn't stay that way forever. Ilya spent most of her time poring over the recovered files, piecing together the full scope of Project EOS. Each revelation chipped away at her fragile sense of identity, forcing her to confront the reality of her origins. She wasn't just a pawn in someone else's game. She was a product of it, engineered for purposes she still struggled to comprehend. "You're not defined by what they did to you," Jack told her one evening, watching as she stared blankly at the holographic display. "You chose to fight back. That makes you more human than any of them." Ilya glanced at him, her silver eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "And what about you? What happens when the world finds out who and what I really am? Will you still stand by me then?" Jack hesitated, the question cutting deeper than he cared to admit. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. "But I do know this: we're in this together. Whatever comes next, we'll face it side by side." His words brought her a measure of comfort, but the uncertainty lingered like a shadow over their fragile alliance. Their respite was short-lived. A week after the attack on the facility, strange things began happening. Surveillance drones hovered near the safe house, their presence too coincidental to ignore. Encrypted messages flooded Jack's old communication channels, each one bearing the same cryptic warning: "They're watching." Ilya traced the source of the messages to a rogue faction within the organization responsible for Project EOS. Unlike Crane and his ilk, these individuals sought to dismantle the program from within, believing its existence posed a greater threat than exposure. They offered a deal: sanctuary in exchange for the data Ilya had stolen. "They can't be trusted," Jack argued, pacing the cramped confines of the safe house. "For all we know, this is just another trap." "They might be our only chance," Ilya countered, her voice tinged with desperation. "If they're telling the truth, they could help us bring everything into the light. If not..." She trailed off, leaving the implication hanging in the air. After hours of heated debate, they agreed to meet the faction's representative at a neutral location, an abandoned subway station deep beneath the city. It was a risky move, but staying put felt equally perilous. The meeting point was eerily quiet, the only sound the distant drip of water echoing through the cavernous tunnels. Jack and Ilya arrived separately, scanning the area for signs of danger. Minutes passed before a figure emerged from the shadows, clad in a hooded cloak that obscured their face. "I'm Agent Kale," the stranger introduced themselves, their voice low and gravelly. "I represent the Resistance. We've been monitoring your activities closely." Ilya stepped forward, her hand instinctively brushing against the data drive tucked inside her jacket. "What do you want from us?" Kale removed their hood, revealing a scarred visage and piercing blue eyes. "We want justice, and we believe you hold the key to achieving it. Share the data with us, and we'll ensure your safety while we dismantle Project EOS once and for all." Jack narrowed his eyes, suspicion evident in his stance. "Why should we trust you? How do we know you won't sell us out the first chance you get?" Kale smirked faintly. Because we're already being hunted, just like you. Before negotiations could continue, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the tunnel. Reinforcements or enemies were closing in fast. We need to decide now, Ilya urged, turning to Jack. He met her gaze, seeing the turmoil brewing behind her silver eyes. In that moment, he realized something crucial. Trust wasn't about certainty. It was about choosing to believe even when doubt loomed large. Fine, he said, addressing Kale. But if you betray us, I won't hesitate to end you myself. The alliance forged in the subway tunnels proved tenuous at best. Over the following weeks, Jack, Ilya, and the resistance worked tirelessly to disseminate the damning evidence of Project EOS to the public. Leaks appeared in major news outlets, sparking outrage and demands for accountability. Yet progress came at a cost. Betrayals within the resistance threatened to unravel their efforts, forcing Jack and Ilya to constantly look over their shoulders. Through it all, their bond grew stronger, forged in the crucible of shared adversity. Ilya began to embrace her augmented nature not as a curse, but as a testament to her resilience. Jack, in turn, learned to let go of his need for control, trusting Ilya to navigate the complexities of her past. In the end, they succeeded in exposing the truth, toppling the shadowy organization that had orchestrated so much suffering. But victory came with scars, physical, emotional, and psychological, that would take years to heal. As they stood atop a hill overlooking the city, watching the sunrise paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Jack turned to Ilya with a weary smile. "What now?" She shrugged, leaning into him slightly. "Now, we keep moving forward, together." And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, hope flickered brightly on the horizon. If this gripping tale of courage, sacrifice, and redemption resonated with you, don't miss out on more stories that challenge the boundaries of humanity and morality. Subscribe today to ensure you never miss an episode of high-stakes adventure and unforgettable characters.